12, so I thought I would post a video this week that explains how I would go about doing your rough timeline for your coursework study. The first thing you need to do is choose a 100-year period, okay? So 100 years that is focused on a particular theme or idea that you have in mind. Now, I'm going to model an answer and I'm going to base it upon the Stuart age from 1603 to 1702. Some pens to map out my ideas in rough before doing it in neat on your NEA log. So, first thing you need to do is obviously create your timeline and map out your start and end dates. So for me, that's 1603 with the start of James I's reign. And then we're going to have 1702, which is start of Queen Anne's reign as the finisher. Okay, the finishing point. So 1603, James I comes to the throne. And I'm going to make a note, he is Scottish, because that helps to explain some of the problems that he faces as king. The next date I'm going to map out is 1625, because this is when Charles I, his son, comes to the throne after James I dies. And in that time, might help if you have a different colour pen here, we've got kind of rumbling problems with Parliament. Now, what I mean by rumbling problems is these are problems that are building in tension. Parliament are making more and more demands and they are refusing money, refusing to grant taxation unless they receive these demands, and Parliament are kind of becoming bolder and more radical in their ideas. It's also worth noting, for me, another key theme, rise of Puritanism. Now, Puritanism is a radical form of Protestantism that many members of the House of Commons during James's reign held. So they're like key themes in James's reign that I know I need to go back and research in more detail. Then I'm going to make note of 1642 because that is the start of the English Civil War. So I know that between Charles coming to the throne in 1625 to 17 years later, 1642, problems really must have worsened in that time, because now Parliament aren't just complaining and debating and criticising, they're actually picking up arms and going to war against their king. And I know that some of the reasons for that are to do with Charles's personal rule, which is 11 years of time when Charles ruled without Parliament. I also know that Parliament disliked Charles's evil ministers. Now, I'll put those in like kind of quote marks. You can't really see my quote marks. But these evil ministers, Parliament called them evil, mainly because they were following the king's ideas and not introducing the things that Parliament wanted. And these mainly related to religion. But also to do with foreign policy as well. So Charles wanted to go to war, Parliament didn't. Charles wanted a more high Anglican style service with choirs and, beautiful churches. Puritans wanted a much plainer service, a much more stripped down version. These all caused problems. Also worth noting, problems in Scotland, because even though Charles is Scottish effectively, he never bothers to go to Scotland and he tries to impose all sorts of problems, all sorts of religious ideas rather, onto the Scottish people, and they rebel against him. And as a result of that, he needs to call Parliament in order to get some money and sort that problem out. So these are all causes of the English Civil War, but they also are causes for why the monarch's power is declining in the 1630s and the 1640s. The next important event is, of course, 1649 and the execution of Charles I. So, sorry, spoilers, Charles loses the war and is beheaded as a result of it. So this, you can't get any worse when it comes to declining the power of a monarchy than having a king executed by his own parliament. So this is the point. This is a really, you can put asterisks around it. This is your turning point. This is the point that things couldn't get any worse for the kings of England because they've just been beheaded. And his son Charles ends up in exile. So pretty bad. We then have 10 years known as the interregnum. Inter means between, regnum means monarchy, interregnum, between monarchs. And this is a time when Oliver Cromwell tries to rule as a republic. So I could put republicanism under Cromwell here, because I know I will need to research more about Republican ideas and the ways in which Cromwell tried to establish a republic and why it didn't work out, why there was too many disagreements within Parliament for that to work out. Then we've got 1660 and the restoration of the monarchy. Okay, and that's important because it showed that the Republican ideas, Parliament, the idea of Parliament ruling by itself wasn't working out. So actually, after Oliver Cromwell died in 1658, they took 2 years of anarchy, of breakdown in political power, and then they decided to restore the monarchy, and Charles II returned from exile. Now, this is the point that I know a lot about because this is what I've studied before. So, I've filled this timeline in quite easily so far. Now, there is obviously, because this is only 60 years that I've covered now, there's another 40 years that I know I need to research more because there's things there that I'm missing out on, I don't know fully about. But I'm going to put in some important events anyway. So the first thing that I'm going to put in is that in 1679, there was something called the Exclusion Crisis. Now, this was when Parliament, under Charles II, wanted to pass a law that would exclude Charles II's brother, James II, from coming to the throne. Why? Because he was a Catholic. And the parliamentarians hated Catholics. So that is an important event that I need to research. So the next important event on the timeline is the Glorious Revolution, which I've just written in as GR here because I'm running out of space. The Glorious Revolution, again, I don't know much about other than the fact that I know James had to abdicate and give his throne over to his brother-in-law, William of Orange, who became William II, who then ruled jointly with James II's sister, Mary II. So there was kind of two monarchs for a while, Mary and William. And obviously that in itself shows a change and a difference in monarchical power. And it's, relied heavily on Parliament agreeing to their decisions and them agreeing to Parliament's decisions. The reigns of Mary and William, many historians say, as being the shift away from the rule by monarchs this kind of personal role that we study at the minute with the Tudors and carries on throughout the Stuart period, and actually the beginning of Parliament as being the main source of power within the country. And monarch's role really at this stage is just to agree with what Parliament are saying. So that shows the kind of evolution in politics, but also, to go back to my key theme for this timeline, the decline in the power of the monarchy. So I hope me just running through that timeline helps you to think about how you could manage your own timeline. Obviously, I'm doing this from a sort of level of experience. I've studied that period in quite a lot of detail back when I was at uni, so I know the key themes already. But doing that activity really helps to highlight gaps in your knowledge, or things that you need to study a little bit more before you can sort of begin to really look at your question. So have a go. If you're really struggling, just get in touch, and don't worry if there's big gaps at this stage. You know, if you find yourself with a 30-year gap where you can't think of anything that's happened, or you can't find an event that's important to your study, because that's where further research comes in. Okay, all the best.